What's happening in the United States? What's happening in LA? LA. Goodness gracious me. We're understanding that the National Guard will be deployed to Los Angeles following clashes over raids, and these clashes are directly connected to the ICE raids. So undocumented migrants, their homes have been raided by ICE, and riots in the streets of LA. The BBC is reporting this morning that the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, says a force, that's the National Guard, which is due to arrive in Los Angeles, hadn't arrived yet. Up to when did the BBC put this up? Just a while ago. And but that a federal official says that the troops will arrive within 24 hours. California's Governor Gavin Newsom, he's been all over the news, and if you are following him on the social media, you can see too that he's posting like really crazy on the social media. He calls the move from Donald Trump purposefully inflammatory, and he's warning that this will escalate tensions. So, in a predominantly Latino district of LA, residents are clashing with immigration and customs enforcement. That's ICE, federal agents. Donald Trump is posting on Truth Social. He says, these radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. There's a whole thing to that with the National Guards being called up, because the National Guards are usually answerable to, in terms of those who have authority, immediately to the governor. So Gavin Newsom would have been the one to do that, or to agree for that to happen. But the whole thing can be federalized. It can be a federalization of the process. And this is what we understand that Donald Trump is about to do or has done. There's also another way to do it, which I think they won't do. Which one was that again? That is to declare something to do with an insurrection or something of the sort. So lots of groups are getting involved. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, says Trump's order to send the National Guard to LA is unnecessary, inflammatory, and an abuse of power. Ina Shamshi, director of a national security project at the civil rights group, says Trump's move puts Los Angeles residents in danger. She also says it puts troops in legal and ethical jeopardy, and it is recklessly undermining the foundational democratic principle that the military should not police civilians. If you're following this on the social media, I mean, there's just so much happening there. Last night, all night, yesterday evening into last night, into this morning, people were just broadcasting live on their TikTok, on their different channels. And believe me, it is quite something. Even as we're speaking, the legacy media is updating in real time as we're speaking on the live reporting, because here now, more now on the arrest of a U.S. labor union leader, David Herter, who was detained on Friday. He's a president of the California branch of the Services Employees International Union. And the group's website says its local unions in the state are made up of more than 750,000 people, etc., etc. And they said that the union leader was peacefully observing a federal immigration enforcement operation when he was arrested, saying he suffered injuries, and they're calling for his release. So that's happening in real time. One thing we're sure of, though, the pictures coming out of the United States, it looks like Beirut. It looks like Beirut. So this is the... and it was going to happen sooner or later. It's political. It is also part of the Great Reset, because you have to break it down to reset it. So all of this, everything is connected. Everything is connected. In the same way that all of this reporting on the LA riots have taken away from the massive fallout between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. You see what I'm saying? So that fallout and all of that reporting between Trump and Musk was a distraction. And so that distracted from the big, beautiful bill and so much more. And then they needed a distraction from that distraction. So here we go. But it is all connected. All of it is connected. At the same time, Israel is bombing Palestine into nothingness. This is how we know. This is how we know. This is how we know exactly what time of day it is and how the world's set. Because if we can, and we are bearing witness to the annihilation of an entire group of people being bombed into nothingness, and people are protesting, people are marching, people are writing, people are protesting, people are talking. There's hardly anything else left for people to do, but nothing is changing that one thing. And every time I think about this, I said to myself, for 400 and odd years, the enslavement of Africans happened by these very same people, under the noses of these very same people. And it happened, and only when it was no longer profitable, because of the serious resistance by the enslaved warriors, that they began to pull away from this, from slavery, from the enslavement of Africans. It is what it is. And we're dealing with the isness of things. To understand this, I think we all have to go inside of ourselves and understand what's happening around us from our spiritual cores. Because there's just so much information, misinformation, and disinformation around everything that's happening, including that Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, Israel, Palestine, Sudan, Israel, Egypt, because Egypt is just on the fence, literally and figuratively on the fence, and isn't doing anything. Morocco and Algeria, and we see what's happening there too. Ghana has decided to support the United Kingdom and those who are with Morocco against Algeria over that claim of land in the Sahara. Not quite sure where Ghana, thought it needed to throw its hat in the ring. There's some interesting things happening with Ghana, and I think it's all connected to Israel, But we'll kind of go through that at some point. But really, really interesting. Really interesting. But anyway, the point I'm making is that it's all connected. It's all part of the bigger plan. Nothing is happening that is not connected to the next one. So here we are. Here we are. Good morning. Sorry, what a morning we're waking up to. What a morning, what a morning. One thing we know, if we don't have to travel, go to America, no go, right? And if the people don't have to leave America, tell them don't leave. Just chill for right now. Because it is what it is, and it's the isness of things. There you go. At the same time, Europe is preparing for war. At the same time, there is a serious push by the neocons to ensure that there is war between them and Iran. So we're watching that. So while they poke Russia, and by the way, Russia has already responded to that bomb from Ukraine. By the way, Russia was bombing Ukraine all of yesterday into today. It's not being reported on widely, but serious bombing. As a matter of fact, the reports coming out of Russia suggest that this is the worst series of bombings on Ukraine by Russia since this all started. So there is that. And there is a serious push on the other side. So the neocons and the warmongers and the military-industrial complex is pushing really hard, pushing Donald Trump into going to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. So we're watching that. Pakistan and India caught in the middle. It's all connected. Yesterday, on another note, June 7, 2025, marked the 33rd anniversary of a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. 333. June 7, 1692, that earthquake shook the entire country and buried Port Royal. So we're remembering the earthquake of 1692, 333rd anniversary. It's a 9. That year was a number 9 year, 1692. 1 plus 6 plus 9 plus 2, 18. 8 plus 1 equal 9. This year is also a number 9 year, 2025. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. We're in the throes of a magnitude 10 geopolitical earthquake. We're talking about that. Global disruption, socially and economically. The threat of war, even as old Europe rearms itself. In a climate of such great socioeconomic uncertainty, Jamaica can ill afford to hinge on the import of tourism while paying scant attention to food security and safety, agriculture, distribution, access to land, access to water, personal safety and security, decolonizing education, and just overall offering its citizens a beacon of hope for equality and justice. So we're standing by and we're watching and we're waiting and we're seeing, but we're also ensuring that we're in charge of our own destiny. A quick break. We're back with you at 6:36. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And joined in the studio by a very special guest. Haven't spoken to Majai on air in a very, very long time. So very happy to have him in the studio with me this morning. My brother Majai is a Rastafari teacher and a yoga instructor. He joins me live. Majai, grab your microphone so that we can have a little chat. We haven't spoken in such a good while, but I mean live on air.
Thank you very much for your presence.
Yes, man, it's been a while. I remind our listeners that on one of our trips to Africa, we were literally together on that trip. We traveled together.
Beautiful.
Remember that trip there?
Yes. Memory is the power of knowledge. So how could I not hold on to that a wonderful knowledge as that? So thank you very much again.
What year was it? 90?
I think it was 1997.
97.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. Right. So, I know one of the things that you also do is music and especially Nabinga chants and so on. How's the music business with you? How's that going?
Well, music is life and life is music, So where the creative energy did in the manifestation of, whatever work I bring in already, I still open my energy that when the calling is there again, the continuation will be. So I'm not doing anything presently on that level, but I'm giving thanks for what is.
Right. So you're focusing now more on the yoga side of things, the spiritual development, that side of thing. What is yoga?
Okay. You see, I laugh and you laugh. So that's a joyful question. No, yoga is life and life is yoga. Yoga is breath, vision, and movement. So breath, vision, and movement always create a beautiful thing called a dance that allows everything to harmonize and to balance, flexibility, and everything to realize once again that we have the power to fly. And We know that flying is wonderful. People don't remember to use the vision, the meditation, the word with their own movement to fly. Still might be picturing an angel with a wing in the back flying, you know. So yoga is one of the best things anyone could ever do for themselves, because when I do yoga and people say I've never done yoga before, I say, listen, even though you think you've never done yoga before, yoga is always doing you. But if you do come into a class, it's your time to reconnect with your own physical and spiritual harmony.
Well, explain that for us. When you say yoga, even if you've never done it before, it's always doing you. Explain what that means.
Well, it explains itself, because people walk, people twist, people turn, people sit down, get up, lie down. All that's yoga they are doing.
So that once you get into a more structured way of
Yes.
doing that, you become more aware of what all of that does to you.
Yes, and the terminology or the power is self-love. So once you come into that self-love, especially when you're going to be reminded of powerful one art, then you will always joyfully do yoga, because it disciplines everything, not just
Right.
mind alone, but mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
You know?
I know so many Rastafari who do yoga, who are yoga instructors, who are students of yoga. Is this a natural blending in that Rastafari with yoga? Is this ultimately a natural thing that
I'm glad you mentioned in Rastafari, because anything is of goodness is Rastafari. Let us not allow diversity to put any conflict into anything that we don't have the harmony. So in that power now, I pray and I do hope that people in the Rastafari Foundation would really hearken onto that yoga energy, all people in general, because you have to remember that life is eternal. And the only way that remembrance will come is if you harmonize your presence, because even though people might say, well, thing is physical, spiritual, visible, invisible, but self always have that. So if I remove my presence from you and go anywhere else, I'm going to see a reality of physical energy again in a different, you call it dimension or whatever, you see. So breath is life and life is breath. So that's why people need to be reminded how to breathe wonderful, they call it properly. And since I give thanks that at this moment, which is ordained, appointed, anointed for us to do what we're doing here, national and international, I give thanks to all those who are using the 3 ears, that is outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear, to connect with this vibration of breath. To breathe properly once again, one have to remember they call the breath ki, chi, prana, even oxygen, is one foundation. So to really get that real balance of the energy in breathing, one should always inhale through the nostril long and slow. Now that will bring it into the lower abdomen. The abdomen should be going out. If you're standing, if you're lying down, it's going to go up. So when you feel that abdomen going out and you see, you know, wow, it's not going to go anymore, but you're still having the breath as a good power. You rise it into the lungs, into the chest, which is in that heart region, with a comfortable swallow. And when you swallow that prana, that energy that you're taking, it's going to sit and it's going to give you a good recharge of energy, because you have to be coming out because you go in. So when you're going to be coming out with the exhalation now, the mouth is wider. And you just open the mouth for a slow, but you should pull the abdomen in with that exhalation. Now you're going to feel how wonderful all that great energy flows out. And here's something great now.
Yes.
The next breath is going to be empowering. And since we're on the breath, let us see the magical way that the breath works. Now our mouth can be closed, but our nostril is always open. So energy goes in and out very freely. That's why sleep is so sweet. So when you inhale that prana through the nostril, it goes immediately into the third eye, into the forehead. It opens your vision. Then it rises into the head set that is for direction. Now, you have to see it coming into the lower abdomen. That's the willpower chakra, they call it. It's a willingness. And we can always say people remember things, but you say it differently at times. Anyone ever tell you need guts to do it? Yes. So it's a willingness. So when now that gut goes out and the willingness, then now you lift it into the lungs to create the balance and the harmony. So they say actually, when you start the breath into the chest, they call it a desire, a short breath. When you bring it into the lower abdomen, it will give you the will for the desire to be. So when you rise it into the desire and you're comfortable swallow now to retain, you're building up the energy because you already have the vision. Because when you exhale, you have to be doing to get manifestation. And then now, that is why word in the beginning is a word, and word is so very important. So we have to remember how sacred the mouth is with words. So one really truly have to be very careful what they open their mouth to say. You can bring that into manifestation.
Exactly. And I want to talk about that for a minute. But before I go there, to go back to breathing and breath, because one of the things you said at the beginning of that discourse was that so for proper I notice you literally put the word in parentheses, but for proper breathing is that when you inhale, you're supposed to see your belly rise, your stomach rise, because you're taking in something. It shouldn't go in. So the thing with that is that so many of us are not breathing properly.
Exactly.
Because when you're breathing in, just take a deep breath and see what happens to your stomach.
Yes.
If it goes in, then immediately you're saying this is wrong.
It's total.
You're taking in.
Yeah. That's frustration.
Yes.
And that doesn't build clarity within self. It creates anxiety and all things. So remember, people know everything. They don't remember what they know. But sometimes they bring in back a little remembrance, not getting the full reconnection to love it, to continue to do it. But for instance, if anyone sees anyone agitated, look like things are not going to be good, they say, calm down and take a deep breath.
Yes.
But they don't remember how to calm down to take the breath. And what I realize, one of the reasons why people are not breathing properly is because they're not holding in the retention. They often puff, you see. So the retention, which is very simple, a gentle swallow, because eating sustains life with food in the physical form. And they tell you, chew your food gently, swallow diligently. So you have to swallow the food. Even when you put it in the mouth to eat, the essence and the taste is already working magic. But when it goes now, it needs to do its own magic properly. That's why it sits into the abdomen for the nutrients to come out, to go to the respective places that it needs to energize before what need to come out.
So this is as good a time as any for a breathing exercise.
Yes, of course.
Just getting up early in the morning.
Yes.
This also helps with meditation, doesn't it?
Yes, because remember, the inhaling of the prana that goes through the nostril into the third eye to open the vision. That meditation, you open the door to meditation. And meditation and vision sit side by side.
Yes.
So that's why if you're going to think about anything, it's even more better for you to breathe as slow and as deep as you can.
Right.
Because you need that great reconnection to plug into what one knows.
Yes.
And I have to keep emphasizing and knowing. One thing I love about yoga, it really reconnects me to my evolutionary consciousness, where it always let I remember that I am the I am also, because I cannot see myself lower than nor higher than my creator, but one and the same. So when you really take that time to use the breath wisely, because life is eternal, there's no end to life, people need to remember that.
Right.
So we are well blessed.
Right.
But we need now to get that great joy of prosperity in what we're going to do, and that creates a harmony with breathing in everything we do in a wise way. Coming back to sleep again, that's why when the physical cannot go anymore and one sleep, the energy is working on its own really at that time. And if someone is lying down to sleep, you see the abdomen rise when they inhale, it goes back down when they exhale. Now, when someone is in deep sleep, sometimes you have to go near to the abdomen to make sure that you see that rising to say, yes, they're in the same dimension as you are.
Yes, same dimension. I love that. All right, so take us to a minute or so of breathing exercise.
All right, and I'm glad you did that. One thing I love about what we are doing here in the appointment vibe, everything is so intuitive, because you really come to what I was also going to do and advice. And I give thanks again to all the listeners out there, national and international, because we know each other already. We are reconnecting now. Breath. When you're going to breathe properly, it's always good to sit up straight anyhow if you want great connection, because all the alignment is in the spinal column where the energy centers are. So you just keep that mouth closed, and you take that long, slow inhalation through the nostril. Your consciousness is working to feel it go into the lower abdomen. You can also use that consciousness of the physical and the spiritual and gently move it out. It will go out anyhow. If you allow it, that's when the sleeping comes in, But when you put your own physical balance, it's more joyful. Right. So you will just allow that abdomen to go out, but your focus should be holding on that inhalation, because you're going to lift it when you feel that abdomen not extending anymore, to rise it into the lungs, into the chest, with that nice, comfortable swallow at the end of that inhalation. And that will allow you to be lighter, holding in that nice vibration. And you're not going to stifle yourself. It's self-love. Right. So you will know, well, yes, I think I need to go out now. You just open the mouth slow and you go, but consciously. Yes. Hold the abdomen in as far as you can, because the next breath is more joyful to take, because it's going to create you more energy. So if you're walking and you're tired and you know you still got to go, that's when you should really be focusing on reconnecting the breathing to recharge and keep you going into that vibration. So, yes, so once again, inhale through the nostril long and slow. In the lower abdomen, feel it going out. Lift it into the lungs, swallow gently. Open the mouth, exhale, and you're in for your flight.
Love that. So I hope you're doing some breathing exercises this morning. And, we can't underscore enough, because I know this is something that we have to do in media, right? Media training.
Yes.
Breathing exercises.
It's necessary.
Which it is phenomenal how many people breathe wrongly, because you inhale and you pull in your stomach.
Right.
But you're taking in air, you're taking in oxygen. So how come? So remember that you're taking in something. So that's why your stomach's supposed to rise, because you put something in. You let it out, so your stomach it goes down.
Yes.
All right. So and it's all I hear. So we say stomach because your belly is supposed to rise.
Your belly, yeah, man.
You make your belly rise.
Them say abdomen too in different term, because diversity beautiful when you know it's the same thing. We are dealing with
aching movements of a proud unborn warrior.
What do you mean?
All right. All right. So you talked earlier about words and how important words are.
Very much.
What comes out of your mouth.
Yes.
Expand on that for us.
All right. In divination, our people might hear, they say, in the beginning was the word. And then the word create manifestation. So you can see diversity, not just in flesh alone, but all things that you can say, wow, that's that and that's that. So because words are so very empowering now, we have to be very careful, because what I learn about words, even in any negative statement you make or a negative word, the positive is always in the same thing. For instance, if someone say, oh, that's a disappointment, appointment is with disappointment, you see. So it's for one to realize that the blessing hasn't left one totally, you see. So if it creates a reaction that you feel something that you might call it a hurt or whatever, you still have to know to go into self, because you have that experience, and still now put this aside and hold on to your appointment and just go through.
So basically, as important as breath is, and breath which creates and recreates, you say words do the very same thing.
Yes.
In terms of what you speak, you create, you bring into being.
Exactly. And that's why I love Rastafari so much. And as I say Rastafari, I am empowered to say again, all who love Rastafari and Rastafari love our life, let us hold that great joy, because I have to say this for myself, that the most omnipotent, mighty, wise I, Eli, 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 Isilasia, the mighty Rastafari, not leaving out the balance of Empress Menenai, because I don't drop from the sky. I don't know about nobody else who want to just leave the feminine energy out of the creative flow. So since we are in this Rastafari energy, His Majesty and Empress name need to be called to strengthen even more of what I am saying and what we are saying right now. So give thanks again for life. So the word energy now again is that the word is very so much important that we can recreate even words, because we are remembering things. Give thanks to Rastafari when we didn't say hello, because word sound is power, and it carries a tone in that when we say Irie, you get that lift up vibration, So we have to look at it. Remember, all governance that is suppressing people come through laws, and laws are created with words. Sometimes people don't remember the power of the word, and sometimes they sign into it, they go for it, they agree to it, not remembering the power that the word is working. And when they see the manifestation, they say, no. But if you're to go to those people who create those laws, they're going to say, but didn't you know that is that? You see, and I will say again, in the word independent, let's take independence then. We know that when in our tradition, when time we were coming out of that flavor vibration, that vibration, but they know that they're not going to totally let us go. But they have to use a scheme now or to get us to still work for their cause. And they say, okay, all right, we're going to give you independence, you see? And then they bring two systems in or whatever, and we know and everyone know that, well, it's not working even until now for the harmony to flow. But if you look at the word independence and listen to the sound, it sounds like you are still in the pen with them or they keep into that pen, you see? So Rasta usually say we don't need independence, we need liberation into our vibration.
Yes, yes.
So you can rise that up into your consciousness and transform it within yourself, and you don't have to bow to a system if you can liberate yourself.
How important is it for us as a people in
Yes.
terms of recreating ourselves
Yes.
and redefining ourselves to be careful of not just our breathing but also of our words, because we think in words too.
Exactly, yeah,
So
because
thought
yeah,
is also,
of course, visible, invisible,
yeah,
everything is
right,
of the word,
yeah.
silently or openly.
Yes.
Yeah, you see?
So important is it for us to be mindful, I think is a word I'm
Well, I know it is very, very important. Sometimes intention is a wonderful thing. This is the silence of the word now. Even though you think that you're not able to create, oh, where did you get that thought from? So where you think about that, you could see yourself doing what you think you couldn't do. You see? So
thought is as powerful as anything.
Yes. It's a lightest form of the vibration of what is going to be manifested.
In other words, it is true that you are what you think.
Exactly. You see? Especially when you bring it into what we would call reality. You see?
Speak it into being.
Yes, speaking into being, and being is to speak.
Yes,
you see?
yes,
so it flows in natural form.
Right.
So why I say this now, we're not going to perplex people's mind and wondering then, oh, do I want to expect a... Open your energy that, okay, send it to I that I need to reconnect with for my knowledge, because I will put a good intention in it. If you put that in words as I said it,
yes.
you're actually doing something to help you to get your restoration.
Yes. You have already shifted the paradigm.
Yes. You shift the frequency, and it's still words doing the dance.
Yes. So, especially for us now, because we are in a very contentious time.
Oh, well, but a joy. I'm not coming in too fast, but I have to put the laughter in. It's contentious, but it's also joyful.
All right, break that down for us, yes?
Well, I'm not going to break anything. I'm going to rise it up.
Well, rise it up.
Yes, I will rise it up. Now, we talk about history and prophecy, you know, revelation of times, Armageddon. So those who hold it into that, you call it inspired way, because sometimes talking about words, I don't want to say no consciousness way, because I don't like that concealable. I like the inspired, because it goes within.
Yes.
So how are we to justify that truth if we don't see the manifestation of a reality? You see? So where we are seeing now, we know, are those of us who were following that vibration, that it had to come.
Yes.
You see? So now that it is here, one shouldn't worry, but be conscious with self. What participation are you putting in to be having sorrows, which is heavy, to face this reality, or love and forgiveness, which is lighter, to make all things new?
So you're saying breathing, thinking, yoga generally, because when people hear yoga, I know you, because we're still talking yoga.
Of course, everything is yoga. It's life we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So that you're saying that, especially when you feel as if you're going through, and we use the word contentious times earlier, that shifting your thinking, shifting what you say and how you say it, but in particular your thinking and concentrating on your breathing, being mindful of your breathing, that can also shift your frequency, shift your energy. It's like a quantum jump, if you ask me.
Well, but like, you know, I like to say, it goes even nicer than jumping. It's flying.
It's flying. There you go. Right where we started and we're out of time.
Well, I listen.
But before, before you go though, what about persons now who are saying, "Boy, how do I even begin to do yoga? How do I start this?" Because you talk about yoga being the for reconnection to one's highest divine power.
Yes.
How do I even start?
All right, I'll tell you what are the nicest start, because sleep is such a wonderful thing. So when you rise up and you feel that conscious or that connection or that togetherness of the physical and the spiritual, you want to dance to do something now. In that presence of that moment, you start to breathe. What you hear about that nice inhalation and exhalation, and while you're doing that, something else is going to come in. What am I going to get up to do? Yoga is self-love. You don't have to go to a class, but it's good to go to a class, you see. So don't worry that you have to do an hour or 10 postures. Do one first. And then while you're doing that now, you know other things that can be done. You put the same principle into it. And then that memory will be coming back in, especially once again, if you're in a class and you have someone up front, they call a teacher, who's going to help you to do it even more by reminding, so, okay, let's do a stretch, a twist, a bend, and whatever. So everyone can do it because they're doing it, but not conscious.
Okay, how can persons join your class? Because I'm sure you have, I know you have yoga, you're a yoga teacher. How can we join your yoga class?
Well, to be truthful, and I give thanks again for this openness, what is working that I do have a place that was blessed that I could do it. I would just have to reconnect and see if it's still open, and I could just give someone my connection, and then when we get the gathering now, we could move to that location.
Okay.
Because to be truthful, I'm only doing it in the resorts right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is almost like a 9 to 5 situation, is it, or?
Well, when you do
on your own time?
No, well, you see,
Okay.
Yes, I should say the thing is this. I only do it for an hour.
Okay.
So when I get someone, and most people sometimes work during the week, you know,
right,
probably more the way we call it the strong front. People say the weekend, because you still have to begin, so you have to have the strong. So the reality is this: once we get the people who said do that, and then we can set the right movement.
All right, how can they find you? Anyway, do you want
All right, well, to be truthful, you know, if I can give my number out on the sound here, I would do it by saying that, yes, name Magi, and then the connection would be, we know they put the 876 at the front, it would be 856-2114. No, I am going to give you also, and I feel joyful to do this one, my Empress Jasazai number, and I'm going to tell you why again. It is the reminder and the encouragement of Jasazai why I get that vibration, and I have to make it more stronger.
Greetings, Jasazai.
Yes.
All right, go ahead and give
And
that.
I want to make it, greetings, Jasazai, rise and shine, I know you are. So here's the reality now. They say behind every successful man is a woman. So you have to remember that the feminine energy is our greatest power for our creative flow. So Jasazai number is 353-5512, and any connection is the same connection because we're together, and we can take it from there.
All right, Magi, my brethren, my friend, thank you so much. I really, every time, love talking to you.
Well, I'm telling you.
Thank you reminding us to breathe too.
Yes, and the love spreads to everyone that we are loving this morning by saying what we just said.
Give thanks.
One
Give
love.
thanks. Magi there, Rastafari teacher, yoga instructor. Well, guess what? I just completed reading a book. Let me just say this, that I get many. I was about to say hundreds of books. I wouldn't be lying, but I get many books per month, right, from authors who are want to be part of the Running African Book Club, are interested in what we're doing here, and of the opinion that their books could add something to this space. But just generally, you know, authors saying, read this and tell me what you think, and you know, if you will, put it in your book club or not, but just read it and tell me what you think. So over the years, you know, I've had I read 2, 3, 4 books per week. I'm not lying, you know. serious books too. I'm telling you, there's serious books. Sometimes academic text, sometimes children's books, sometimes just autobiographical or biographical or so on, or so on and so forth. And so I just one of the books I got, and I've said to you over time that one of the things that we do here is that we tend to read the books in the order that they come. Sometimes we allow books to jump the line because of what they are speaking to and my own personal interest. One of the books that I allowed to jump the line is a book called Forged by Time, How I Survived 45 Years in Prison by Ras Michael Gillipriest Heron. And so I read the book. It took me a day and a half, or probably less, to read the book by Ras Michael Gillipriest. I'll just read a blurb for you. Unjustly imprisoned since 1979, Michael Gillipriest Heron has put to paper what prison is like for someone who was wrongfully convicted in a nation that prides itself on justice, freedom, and equality. A gripping memoir of his childhood and years spent in New York State prisons, Forged by Time is a first-hand account of police corruption and assaults at the hands of prison guards who literally packed their KKK regalia along with their lunch. Along the way, Gilly comes to discover that it was little more than sharing the name Gilligan with another Jamaican back when Gilligan's Island was a popular TV show that has kept him locked away all these years. Told in an easy conversational style, Forged by Time is a historical manifesto of both a post-independence Jamaica, as a country and people established their identities, and a story of Gilly's survival against long odds. Well, Gillipriest is in the studio with me, and we're going to hear from him in a minute, but let me tell you a little bit about him. So, of course, Ras Michael Heron Gillipriest is an author. He earned a bachelor's degree in behavioral sciences, graduated magna cum laude, and went on to complete a master's degree in professional studies. After migrating in 1979, Gillipriest Michael Heron was incarcerated for what he consistently maintained were politically motivated allegations. He would go on to spend 45 years behind bars, during which time he consistently fought to prove his innocence. And you need to read the book to understand exactly what that entailed. I read the book, and I'm telling you, one of the things that happened to me while I was reading the book, I forgot everything and everybody around me. I sat down and I read that book, and I know that my husband was talking to me one at a time, and I know my daughter said something to me. But it's when I done read the book and feel like I come out of the movie, because it read like a movie, and look around me and realize that I was still in my living room, and it's a book that I read. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's a really good read too, by the way. This storytelling is great. So Gillipriest Michael Heron's time in prison was not only marked by personal achievement, but also by his commitment to helping others navigate their own struggles. And we'll talk about that this morning. Despite unimaginable hardship of incarceration, Michael turned adversity into opportunity. Following his return to Jamaica in May 2024, Michael Gillipriest has dedicated himself to understanding the conditions of prisoners and deportees in the country. And this is how we met, right, Gillipriest? This is how we met. Recognizing the stigma and marginalization faced by returnees, he founded Forged by Time Limited, a social enterprise committed to providing guidance, support, and access to essential services for those reintegrated into society. Through this work, Michael Heron continues to be a voice for justice, reform, and human dignity, both in Jamaica and beyond. He joins me in studio. Welcome, Gilly Priest.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much for coming in, all the way from Kingston.
I appreciate it.
Yes. I know you want to sit back, so that's fine. So pull the microphone closer to you. Well, let me just turn it off and we'll get it closer to you. Once again, the book is called Forged by Time, How I Survived 45 Years in Prison. 45 years. That's a long time, my brother.
That's basically my entire life. Because I went in the system at 19 years old and came out at 64 years old. So that encompassed my entire life experience. And sometimes I was asked, what do I think of that experience? And I said, well, it's not an experience I would ever change. Not for the fact that it's outside of possibility of changing it, but it's the only experience I have, so I learned to embrace it. And that's what it was.
I read the book. I told you I was reading it line upon line, precept upon precept. I wasn't lying. I read it just like that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And made all my little jottings along the way. I had to read it almost 2 times, right? The first time was reading it seriously. The second time was just going over to ensure that I hadn't missed anything, because it reads like a movie. So I wasn't surprised when somewhere in the book you mentioned Colin, the brother. I think his name is Colin.
Yeah, Colin.
Who you met while in prison, who had a similar situation to you in that he was incarcerated unjustly.
Yeah.
And later on went on to make, a movie was made about his life.
Yes, Crown Heights.
Crown Heights.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that movie, so I went and I watched it yesterday.
Yeah.
Because that also helped me to understand a little bit more of your own situation.
Appreciate that, yeah.
So I like the way the book is set out, by the way, because you do Jamaica, you write a little bit about Jamaica, and then you go to, Sing Sing. You start with Sing Sing, and then then you take us through your life.
Yes, I do.
Just back and forth. Why was it important to use that style of writing?
Well, the opening chapter began in Sing Sing, and I chose that because from a style of writing, they say you'd have to write something, or you should write something where you grip the reader the instant they open the book.
It did.
And then once you're able to do that, then you can backpedal to where you actually want to start.
Yes.
So it's a matter of using the first 10 pages or so to hold on to the reader.
Yes.
And then hopefully they will want to.
It did. And then it became almost an adventure in a way through your life. Because this is how you continue throughout the book, which is to talk about being in the different prison systems in the United States, or the different, what do you call them, systems? The institutions. The different institutions.
Yeah.
And then in between that, just to string along that stream of consciousness, it really is brilliant if you ask me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Gilly Priest.
Okay.
You were born here in Jamaica, of course, and you spent a lot of time overseas. A big part of that, 45 years of that, in prison. Yeah. Your early life in Jamaica, you write about here. You're from a middle class family.
Yeah, basically a middle class family. Both parents were professional. My mother was a postmaster general for the eastern section of Jamaica. My father did architectural engineering. He spent many years working at KIW, Kingston Industrial Garage, among other places. So I was basically raised with those, at that time, whatever the moral and the values was at that time, And during the years of my incarceration, I used to go back and reflect at the way I was brought up and see where I could pull my strength from. Because one of the parts of being incarcerated so long, you have to calculate each and every moment of your step in order to survive. You can't just do it haphazardly. You can't just do it randomly. So I was able to regurgitate my past to find my strength.
Very early in your life, you you saw, I was introduced to, and it seems also from reading the book that it was almost organic in a way, the way you came to Rastafari.
Yes.
That as a youth here on the island in the 70s.
Yeah.
You became aware of Rastafari, and you talk in the book about the first time that you saw that, but then how that gradually became part of your own ideology and who you became.
Yeah, so true.
Let me take a break because I want to come back to talk about your early school days on the island. Our special guest in studio, author and Rastafari elder. He's in the house with me this morning. Ras Michael Gilly Priest Heron. The book is Forged by Time, How I Survived 45 Years in Prison. So we're looking at your early days in Jamaica, of course, and through the high school system. One of the challenges you faced going through the system obviously was because by this time you were espousing Rastafari.
Yes, I was, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, basically, my first memories of dealing with Rastafari was when I was about 5 years old. I was residing with my aunt at 2 Love Lane in Kingston. And one evening I was sent out to make a purchase, and came upon a street meeting. Back in those days, Rastafari used to keep street meetings in the middle of the street at night. And that was my first encounter. But it was not an encounter that I was conscious of. It was more on the subconscious level, where later I was able to reflect upon it. And then subsequently I came in contact with a Rastafari elder by the name of Ras Historian. And Ras Historian was the president of the Rastafari Movement Association that was based at 53 Law Street. And there was also where I met Puma Jones. Puma Jones was a singer that eventually joined up with the Black Uru group. Yes. She was an African-American that immigrated to Jamaica. And she was the one that got me into like social consciousness, civic duty. Used to take me around with her to solicit goods from manufacturers and give it out, So then from there on, I took, because of my traveling back and forth, I wasn't able to sit the common entrance. For some reason, I kept missing it. So the last chance I got in Jamaica was
the grade 9 achievement.
The grade 9 achievement.
Yes, you're right about that.
Right.
I recognized it immediately because I remember that. There was it's a second chance.
Yeah, like the last gate. Yeah, the last gate. You missed that, and then you had to go into some type of vocational.
Yes.
Then when I got that, I was I signed it up for George's, Woolmer's, and I think a third school. I don't remember if it was Casey.
Casey, you mentioned in the book.
Casey. And what happened was I was not admitted, even though I passed the test. Those schools refused to admit me because of my Rastafarian, dear word, paraphernalias.
Yes.
And my discipline.
And the paraphernalia you said in the book was like the Rasta,
the belt,
Rasta belt.
The belt and the socks and all them little things, the buttons and all that, because I was into all that really at that young age.
Yeah.
So my mother had to come down and she had a conversation with the principal at Mount Bay High School because she had gotten to know him while she was a postmaster at Mount Bay Post Office, and I got into that school. But basically,
so your mother was in the U.S. and she heard that she was in the U.S. at that time?
At that time, she had immigrated, and then I had to contact her and let her know that even though I passed the grade 9 achievement test, all the schools were rejecting me based upon my Rastafari consciousness. So she returned to Jamaica and visited the principal at Mount Bay High School, and due to their conversation, well, he kind of said basically he would admit me as long as I dropped all that Rastafarian stuff in his words, and that was how I got into Mount Bay High School.
But you didn't drop the Rastafari?
No, I did not.
But you wrote about how you learned early to be present, but not visible.
Yes,
and because you literally were hiding from the principal.
Yeah, and that was what that experience played a large part in my incarcerated period, where I was able to get things done in a facility known by certain people but still not there.
Yes.
And that was how I was getting around the principal at Mount Bay High School.
But your school days here on the island, even though you got into Mount Bay, it still seemed as if it was a bit rocky for you. Expelled twice.
Yeah, I did. It was.
Yes. So on the first time you were expelled, what was the reason again?
One time the first time I expelled was I refused to close my eyes during devotion.
Right. Yeah.
What happened was I knock it with some of my friends and we tell them, this closing of the eyes and praying to a white God, I'm not with it. I can't really keep faking it. So we came to agreement, about 4 or 5 of us, at the prayer devotion. Mm-hmm. At that time in school, every form had a prayer devotion morning. And we decided not to close our eyes. And the principal, a principal by the name of Mr. Perkins, while he was praying, he looked up and saw that my eyes were open, and my friends closed their eyes. So he summoned me to the principal office, and that led to my
expulsion. So you were expelled then, and then you. What I like about your resilience, and you write about that in the book, is that you went to you sought a way to get back in school, including going to the Ministry of Education.
Yes, I went to the Ministry.
But at the end of the day, it took you going to Morant Bay, sitting in the corridor, day in, day out, until the principal said, "Boy, you're not going to your class."
Right, that was I learned a lot from that simple thing, because when I went with a childish mentality, when I went to the Ministry of Education, I went there on a more bombastic level, believing that the minister was going to side with me, and then I would go back to the principal and basically throw it in his face. And then when the person that I saw sitting here today, I don't believe I actually spoke to the Ministry of Education, but at that time that was my belief. And it was such a letdown when this ministry representative told me that the ministry does not run the schools in Jamaica. Right. It is the principal.
It's interesting, because this issue has not, in terms of Rastafari children in school. That is still an ongoing problem. And you're talking about 1970...
75, 74, 73, 74, 75, yeah.
Right. And you were expelled another time. And this time when you were expelled... You didn't go back to school?
No, I was actually banned from going into the parish, because what happened was I borrowed a kid's bicycle without his permission, and I went down into the town to get a pair of soccer boots. And the principal saw me when I left the campus, and he knew that I was not one of those guys who rode a bike to school. So he went and asked the owner if he had given me permission, and the owner told him no, he did not give me, which is correct. He did not give me permission. I just rode it, because that was like a practice. It's not like you stealing it. But anyway, the principal went to the police station, reported that I stole a bicycle, and he went to the kid's family. And eventually, when the police officers came, they told me not to return to school and not to return to the parish.
Mm-hmm. And so this ultimately led to you going to the United States.
To complete high school.
To complete high school. One of the things you write about throughout the book is, and I find riveting, the political situation in Jamaica that you engaged with and that you witnessed as a youth, but also that socioeconomic political situation also in New York, and how Caribbean people were living, Jamaican people and Caribbean people generally in the Bronx and so on. A really great insight into what that whole time was. So was it, you said for you it was a culture clash?
Yes, it was. It was starting with the school. Mm-hmm. Because we went to a school where in those days where you had the majority of the teachers were white. And the teachers, from my personal opinion and experience, they didn't actually care about the education of the students coming here. So they would basically come in the classroom and ask you, what is it you want to do today? And the average person is going to say, okay, well, they want to watch television in the classroom. And I was structured in such a way in the schools in Jamaica, going through a structured system, that I could not deal with this laissez-faire approach in the U.S. So I stumbled there, and then I had to come back to Jamaica.
Yeah. You talk also about the gangs. You witnessed how gangs were in the school, baby gangs to the bigger gangs and so on, and how the school was almost like a part of that system.
Right. It was not actually a learning institution for me personally. Mm-hmm. It was gang-infested, and the teachers wasn't there actually from my perspective to teach and for students to learn. So it was more like you would refer to it like they were babysitting us. Just like you would have a babysitter at home that tried to comfort the child. That was what schooling was. And then I literally realized that I was falling back.
Right, so you were back and forth between New York, the Bronx, and Jamaica, because after you came back, and you were literally selling on the street corner.
Yes, I was selling right at the corner, South Parade and King Street. And while selling there, it keeps bothering me. I kept getting this feeling like I was being stuck, like I was not moving, I was not progressing as an individual. And it got so much in my consciousness that I'd say, you know what, I have to leave. I have to return to the U.S. to find some way to progress, some way to... I needed a feeling of growth.
Yeah.
And even today in my life, if I go 3-4 days without doing something, I start to get that stagnant feeling where I have to do something. So that was what was happening there.
Right. That was obvious to the book, because you kept going back to the fact that you needed to finish your high school education. So that back and forth. But you did go back to the U.S.
Yes, I did.
At some point, finished... you didn't finish high school at that point either.
At that point,
but talk to us about how you, because as a young boy, in the system in the Bronx in New York, it sounded to me as if you were introduced to a kind of a global, a melting pot kind of a situation that included criminality, drugs. Even while family was at the core.
Right.
You talk about your relationship with your mom and how other families, lived. What was that like for you, that experience? Because obviously this is not a Jamaican kind of thing. Right. Even though Jamaica, you talk about how the violence was just about to happen in Jamaica.
Right. Well, one of the contexts I would like to point out, in those days in Jamaica, most of us were young teenagers. Our parents worked. And there was not a strong, outside of the home, there was no cultural engagement, except that my mom used to take me to the Jamaica Progressive League. For those who are not familiar with the Jamaica Progressive League, the Jamaica Progressive League was basically the founders of the People's National Party in Jamaica in the 1930s. A lot of people is not aware of that association. So a lot of Jamaicans would take their kids to the Jamaica Progressive League, where they would teach them how to cook Jamaican style, play Jamaica. Anyway, what is important to me about that context is that they used to have in the U.S. what they call reefer houses. And reefer houses were apartments that basically Jamaicans started opening up to sell marijuana. What I found fascinating with those reefer houses was there was where we used to go for cultural engagement, reasoning with each other, listening to music, and for those who had immigrated at a very young age, they learned about Jamaica, because the school didn't teach us about Jamaica.
So these were really important social spaces for Jamaicans.
Very much. But in this space now, you find criminality acts, selling of marijuana. You may come in encounter with weapons. You may hear people glorifying engagement in criminal activity. But people were there for different reasons. Everyone was not there for the same reason. Sometime now you will go there for one reason and then you get contaminated by the next, which is also that was part of that cultural experience.
Yeah. One of the things you talk about is how easy it was to be in a group of people, and somebody would probably steal a car, and that seemed to be the. What was the reaction? I'm not quite sure I got it from the book. Like, is this was like a simple crime then?
Yeah.
That the police didn't necessarily spend a lot of time on.
What it basically was for me, at that young age, I did not understand what criminality was. So, saying that, what I'm trying to say is that you would be around criminality and not knowing that you could be charged based on association.
Right.
So as a young child, I would say, okay, my friend stole a car. I would drive in the car. I would go in the car with them and drive around and have fun, knowing that I was not involved.
I got clearly, yes, your naivety.
That naivety.
In those spaces,
not knowing that when the police pulls you over, you're going to be charged as an accomplice.
Right.
And that was when I first got that encounter with the law in terms of joyriding. We used to call it joyride. Yeah. Because I growing up in Jamaica, even a simple thing as coming from school and going on someone's property and picking up a mango, I never used to engage in anything like that.
Right.
But coming home, I wait for my friends, they would go and do it, I stand in this. Yeah. And that was how I took approach to crimes when I went to the U.S., that if I wasn't physically engaged in the commission of a crime, then I would be absolved. Somehow I expect the system
You had a kind of a belief in the system.
Yeah.
That the justice system would take care of that, which wasn't true.
Right, which wasn't true.
I'm going to take a quick break, but when I come back, we want to talk about Gilligan. Is that the hat? No?
No, this.
Oh, I need to go look that up because I kept saying, which hat is that? That looks like...
It's a hat that has a rim that goes around. It's like made out of canvas. Sometimes you see those military guys wear it.
Ah.
But it has the complete rim.
Yes. Because I don't know the show you talk about, which is Gilligan's Island.
Yeah,
yes, okay. I don't know that show. But anyway, let me take a quick break. Heron Gilly Priest is my very special guest in the studio. Forged by Time: How I Survived 45 Years in Prison is his book. We don't have a whole lot of time, so we're going to jump over some and give you a chance to get a copy of the book and to read the book. But Gilly Priest, suffice to say that somewhere along the line, you started wearing a specific kind of hat, and that hat related to or looked like a hat from a television show, and you got the name of the person who wore the hat in that show. Talk to us about that hat.
Yeah, well, what happened, I came to Jamaica, and I don't remember how I came in possession of a hat. Well, it was a hat that was worn by a character from the Gilligan's Island program. That was a regular TV sitcom that they used to have in the U.S. I don't remember if I ever seen that sitcom in Jamaica, but it was a regular daily program. And so one day when I returned to the Bronx, I entered the park, and when I'm emerging, them see me at that time. Basically, I said, "Here comes Gilligan," and everyone laughed, and that was how that name got stuck on you. Yeah.
Let me just remind you quickly that this hour is brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. The hour between 7 and 8 o'clock brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, 7:38. And then it came a time, Gilly, that a crime was committed, and this was murder.
Yes, it was.
How did that hat?
Well, what happened was after the crime, the police had gathered information, and from the information they gathered, they started to search for two individuals. One of the individual name was allegedly Michael Dunbar, a.k.a. Gilligan. Now, this was at the time when I had already now started to use the name. My friends started to call me Gilligan. And so when I got arrested, the police was in search of Gilligan, who they alleged had committed the crime. And let me kind of get into just a little context of the crime. The allegation basically from the Bronx County District Attorney Office was that two individuals, Michael Dunbar, a.k.a. Gilligan, and Aston Thompson, he was known in Jamaica as Bucky Marshall. These are the two people they said they were in search of. So they went to one of the crime scene and investigated, spoke to 4 alleged witnesses. And one of the alleged witnesses made a statement and said, that sounds like Gilligan and his boys. This is a person who did not actually witness the crime. So then, when I had gotten arrested as a kid driving in the stolen car joyriding, they had a picture of me at the precinct. So they took that picture to the person who first mentioned the name Gilligan, and that person said, no, this is not the Gilligan she was referring to. But at that point, the police had already come to some type of determination that they arrested me with that name, so I was going to be prosecuted and charged for it. And the basic allegation was that these two individuals, Michael Dunbar, a.k.a. Gilligan, and Aston Thompson, Bucky Marshall, who got killed March 26, 1980 in New York himself, so he wasn't arrested or charged. And that these two individuals were selling marijuana, using the proceeding from the marijuana and purchasing weapons, that these weapons were being sent to Jamaica to fight the upcoming 1980 general election. I believe it was one of the most bloody political years in the history of this country. And that the person who was supposed to be transporting these weapons back and forth at one point misappropriated a set of the weapons, and therefore those two people were ordered to be killed. And I was charged in the murder of those two persons. And the other person they were looking for was Aston Thompson, Bucky Marshall, but he had died before, never got arrested. And I went to trial by myself, but in the argument in co-conspiracy with Aston Thompson.
Yeah. You talk about how you were literally tortured and beaten by the police when you were arrested.
Yeah.
That whole process of interrogation, that you thought you would die.
Yes, I really.
How old were you?
I was 19 years old. when I got arrested.
Take a minute to talk about that. Sorry to bring you back to that, but
yeah, when I got arrested, I like to share one experience before that. One time while when I was attending Mornby High School, they had taken us on a trip outside to go to the courthouse, the Mornby courthouse, to visually see how the court conducts itself. And I remember at that young age, maybe 14, 15, 16, whatever year it was, I had this impression when I went to the court that the judge was all-knowing, that just by the fact that he was a judge, he would be able to cipher out falsehood from truth. Mm-hmm. And I relate that experience because when I got arrested and was eventually taken to see through the system, I was expecting that. I had this false notion that here you have a judge, the judge will know the facts. Somehow that was just my perception. Mm-hmm. But anyway, when I got arrested, I was held at the precinct for 3 days.
Which precinct was that?
It was at either the 47 or the 48 precinct in the Bronx. And I was being interrogated. Mm-hmm. And for those 3 days, I was handcuffed to the chair, beaten. Mm-hmm. And they asked me about the crime. And I kept insisting that I am not Michael Dunbar Gilligan. Mm-hmm. And they keep insisting that I was. Mm-hmm. And then after some point, they started to switch the argument and say, well, they wanted the weapon. Mm-hmm. And I kept insisting that I'm not Michael Dunbar, I do not have any weapon. Mm-hmm. But at some point during the interrogation, I started to feel like I was going to lose my life. Yeah. And I had to escape from these guys. Mm-hmm. So at one point, I told the officer, okay, I have the weapon. He said, you have the weapon? I said, yes, I have the weapon. They said, where's the weapon? I said, I have it in a building that located at 167 on Grant Avenue. And the reason why I chose that address, it was an abandoned building. Mm-hmm. So my intention, I was going to take them inside the building, like up on the 3rd floor, and I was going to jump through the window and escape from them. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately for me, when we went to the abandoned building, one of the officers, he held on to my pants waist, so I couldn't get away. So what they did was they forced me up on the roof. The building was like a 6-story roof. And they tell me to go down the edge and then try to convince me to jump. So what I did was I went to the edge of the building, and it was early in the morning, maybe 5, 6, while people was going to work. And then I just started to shout out, just started to scream out to draw the people's attention so they would look up and see that something wrong was going on the roof.
You said you were screaming murder?
Yeah, screaming. And then when the crowd started to, passerby started to look up and saw me on the roof, I was screaming murder. The officers went down on his knee and came out and tell me to get off the roof, get off the roof. And then I kind of have them going around in a circle in the street, just making up stories, just trying to figure out not to get. And
I got from that the pain that you were close to death.
Yeah.
And so you had them just driving around saying, oh, the gun is there, the gun is there, the gun is there. But that was an escape route for you.
Yeah, trying not to get back at the precinct.
Yeah. But it seemed to me, even then you thought that there was no way you're going to be convicted. First of all, you're not Michael Dunbar. Right. You're Michael Heron. And there's no way, I mean, even though you've gone through all of this, you would have been convicted. But I don't know if you used betrayal, but you were betrayed many times.
Yes, it was. And what happened was, it was a betrayal that's based upon my own lack of knowledge. Lacking certain consciousness, how the system worked. Not at that time fully developed, knowing that there was a systemic racism.
Yes.
And that was just being started to come into my consciousness. And the sad part of that experience also is how quick at times, and this is one of the hurtful and most painful part for me, how quick at times the Jamaican government assists foreign governments in setting up their own citizens, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously.
How did they do it in your case?
In my situation is this. When I eventually contacted the Jamaican consulate in New York and tried to explain to them the identity process, they kept telling me that they cannot intervene in the judicial process of the United States or in a foreign country.
In other words, you were arrested as Michael Dunbar. So you're reaching out to the consulate to say, I am Michael Heron, but they have me here as Michael Dunbar.
As Michael Dunbar, and see what type of evidence I could generate from the Jamaican documentary system to do that. And for some reason, no assistance. And what got to me is this: whenever, and based upon experience, whenever the United States system contacts the Jamaican government for any information to assist in convicting a Jamaican citizen, they can intervene in the system then. But when the citizen contact them and ask them for assistance in proving innocence or whatever issues they develop, they will interject that they cannot intervene.
They cannot assist. Hang on for me. She's 7. Gilly Priest, you see, we have only 14 minutes.
Yes.
And we don't start talking about the prison system yet, and also the work that you're doing. It means that it's a part 1, 2, 3 interview. Yeah. But, all right. Sorry, the hour is brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs between 7 and 8 o'clock. To kind of make it concise, you went through all of that system, and through the process and through the courts, but you had people testifying also against you.
Yeah.
Because, as you talk about, there's a whole other industry of racism that have people by the balls and the short and curlies, literally, to testify against you.
Yeah.
You ended up in prison.
Yes, I did.
That first time on the bus, you thought you still would be able to show that you were innocent.
At that point, yes, because at that point they always try to tell you, okay, then you're going to get. You see, in the United States, and it may be the same thing in Jamaica. Whenever you get convicted by a jury, you are not fully accepted as convicted until you get your first right to appeal. So your sentence does not become final until you go through an appellate process. So after I was found guilty, I pinned my hope on the appeal process.
And you got how many years?
Huh?
How many years you got at the found guilty with the sentencing?
The sentence was 45 years. I was sentenced to 45 years to life. I was sentenced to 2 life sentences. 45 years to 2 life sentences.
That must have shocked you to the core.
I could not even calculate that type of time.
How old were you then? 19?
I was 19 years old. And at that time, I knew no one. I met no one in the system at that time with that length of sentence.
And by this time, you had 2 children?
At that time, 2 children, a son and a daughter.
So, what was it like? You've done such an excellent job, right, in the book, in terms of writing about what the prison situation was like. Racism in prison and all of that. So I'm really going to recommend the book to our listeners, because there's more to it. In telling your own story, what you have done is to tell a story of a system that is inherently racist. It continues to be to this day. So what you went to which prison first?
First, I went to Elmira Correctional Facility. That's a facility where basically they send young juveniles that admitted into the system. So I was specifically designated to that prison by the sentencing court because of my age.
Yeah.
And then once you go through reception there, then you're dispersed to based upon a classification system. So because of my sentence and the crime, I was designated top security, and I was shipped to a maximum security facility. So, and
what you've done in the book is that the chapters where the different prisons that you've been through, you spent some time talking about them. For example, and this was, you're talking about 1980. 1980. So Elmira, then you moved to, and like we say, it's a back and forth, Attica.
Yes, I did.
These are things we just see in the movies. Then Clinton, you seem to have spent quite a long time at Clinton.
I did a total of 18 years at Clinton in 3 different occasions.
Right. And Greenhaven.
Yes.
Also upstate CF is Correctional Facility. Yeah. Clinton Correctional Facility. And how you pronounce this one?
Shawanga.
Yeah. And then Coxsackie.
Kawasaki.
And also Adirondack. Adirondack and Fiskill.
That was the last facility I was in before Fiskill. I came.
So you've been through all of this. One of the things you talk about in the book is that because you were innocent and because you were very sure that you had to get this appeal. That one of the things you did was to always check for the law library, and it is through that process that you ended up even in the education system in terms of getting your own degrees. Talk to us about that.
Yes, I did. Well, I was first introduced to the law library system in the prison by another prisoner, Jamaican guy by the name of Desmond Andrew. And I vividly remember him saying to me, have you been to the law library? This is when I was first in the maximum facility, let's say for 2-3 months. And I said, no, I didn't know there was a law library here. And he said, come, let me show you where the law library is at. Because I kept telling anyone that I got the opportunity, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. I just kept repeating that over and over. And he introduced me to the law library. And then eventually, over the years, I spent most of my time working in the law library, studying the law, trying to understand it, seeking communication assistance from the Jamaican government. And eventually, I became proficient enough to assist myself and assist others. And then I realized at some point, and this is a key point I'd like to touch upon, I realized after years of fighting and not being successful is that I was becoming stagnant in terms of my own personal development. I needed to grow as an individual whilst trying to get my freedom. Because one of the things you find within these facilities, when you concentrate on one aspect, you neglect the other. So even if you come out of the system and you prove you're innocent, now you're returned to society as an imbalanced individual. I didn't want to experience that. So that's when I started to eventually enroll in the college system and pursued those degrees.
So you got your first degree, you went on to do a master's.
Yes, I went on.
And these were with honors, really?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
You said that the law library, the Rastafari temple, and the school building for you were things that anchored you.
Yeah.
You know, did we ever correspond while you were in prison?
I don't recall, but I think I may have, because the reason why I say I may have is this: what happened when I was in Fishkill, I used to listen to your program on they had a Bandulu station coming out of Fishkill, New York, and there was someone who was broadcasting it on a computer. And but the reception was so bad it would go in and out. And that was when I first came across, get knowledge of your existence. And I'm almost certain that I had reached out, but I'm not quite certain because there were a few people I reached out to.
Because just going through the book, I said, there's so many points, material manifestation points, when we must have corresponded. One was Abuna Fox and what happened. Was it not that whole process of setting up the Rastafari temple and the conflicts, all those issues? I mean, I really covered that. And I was speaking to prisoners, to people who were incarcerated during that period. And so I recall that clearly. But you were so integral to trying to get Rastafari recognized as a way of, and a form of worship within the prison, which you did.
Yes, what happened was I went to a prison by the name of Clinton Correctional Facility, and there I encountered a brethren. Today he runs a blog program out of England. They call him Badass, the runaway slave. That was the acronym that he uses, and he was...
What's his name otherwise?
Well...
It's not
Jaboni.
Is that Jaboni?
Jaboni. Well, he was the one that spearheaded the Rastafari struggle in the prison. He was actually the spearhead of it. And what happened was when I encountered him, when I encountered him, he started to explain. I said, we have to fight this.
Yes.
And he was the one that took the initiative. Yes. And then we kind of galvanized the support around him.
Yes.
And because we were not allowed to congregate service, we were not allowed to assemble more than 2-3 people. So we eventually took it to the court, followed all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And even today, those are rights that are benefit not only by people in the prison system, but right across the entire United States. That's the main case, Benjamin versus Coughlin. That is the name of the case. If you Google it, you will see that case comes up.
Yes.
And this is what gives right for people in corporate America, lawyers, attorney, teachers, to wear dreadlocks, go to their profession. So that was something great that came out of the correctional facility.
Right.
And we have to one more time say, big up to Jaboni. He's the one that we rallied around to spearhead that issue. Yes,
big up Jaboni. And you're right about the issues around that. And then when you moved later on to what was the other? Was it Green Haven?
Yeah, it was also Green Haven.
That the Rastafari temple was actually there, but you talk also about the visit of Abuna Fox and how that went down and so on. I'm talking about it because people who've been listening to this program for a long time will recall that I covered that clearly and was well, you really shed a lot of light on it in this book. So at some stage you were writing to just about everybody in Jamaica in terms of
everybody. At one point my case was picked up by the public defender office down here. His last name was Witter. I don't remember what his first name was.
Yes. Yeah, we know Mr. Witter.
Mr. Witter, yes. Right. And then the Jamaican, on 2 or 3 occasions, the Jamaican government gave me a lawyer. They got involved. I communicated with even former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson. Right. But for some reason, the assistance was not in a fulsome manner, so it kept ebbing and flowing to the point, and then it kind of just petered out.
And you talk about that KD Knight was also had the responsibility to do some investigations, and then later on you said it was published. In the
and
papers.
Even at some point they had sent up to the consulate the identity of Michael Dunbar Gilligan. And then at one point they had informed the court that they were willing to assist in proving my identity. But what happened is whenever the government in Jamaica changed, it's like I went back to ground zero.
So the title of the book is How I Spent 45 Years in Prison, and you got 45 years to life. It means you spent with all the work, you spent 45 years. I noticed on page 155, and I marked the page, you talked a little bit about that survival. I do have the book here. I don't know if you have it, but let me see if I go to 145. I have lines everywhere where you said, I attended college 4 nights a week for almost 3 years while still working in the law library. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Behavioral Science, magna cum laude, on June 17, 2017. And then you talk about those people who attended and those who didn't attend, but that you sat there alone. While you were in prison, you talk about your father passing, your mother passing, all these things and how they affected you. You yourself being ill, getting ill in prison, having a heart attack.
Yes, I had quite twice.
Twice a heart attack. Yeah. How did you survive?
I tell you what, I always go back. My grandmother, her name was Agatha Smart, and she came from the maroon town of Moortown in Portland. And ever since a young child, I always, for some reason, I control this belief system that is the person that I draw my strength from this lady Agatha Smart. Not someone I ever met. I never met her. And for some unexplained reason, her existence and the simple knowledge that I have of her, it feeds me. And I always also go back to the fact of how I was raised. Because what happened was, when I was young, my parents used to recognize a certain determination about me, and they used to give me a lot of responsibility. That's one thing I always credit my parents for. They gave me a lot of responsibility, even from a young age. So I had learned to rely upon myself, to make decisions for myself. In some situation, they may have given me too much responsibility at a too young age. But overall, and stuff like that is what I draw strength, including my culture. And I believe that was one of the most fundamental. When you go into the system with a strong cultural belief and a strong culture that's embedded in your consciousness, it helps you to survive.
There's so many persons you met in prison, including Colin Warner. We talk about the movie Crown Heights, that he came to you and you advised him. And then later on, when he was freed, he came back to you to say, I'm back now. And he helped you quite along the way. But you said that case, it finally, what happened during that process?
Well, what happened was he went and found some of the witnesses, because a total of 4 witnesses had testified against me in both cases. And all witnesses recanted, meaning that they all at some point informed the court that the trial testimony was fabricated. But because for the court to acknowledge that these statements were fabricated, they would have to acknowledge that the fabrication was induced by the prosecutor. So not wanting to implicate the prosecutor, they all denied the...
And we have to underscore that, and that is well said in the book in terms of those persons who later on came with affidavits to say, I was induced, I was pressured. I mean, the one person was pressured that will take your children from you. Another person already had a court case, and so that how the police really coerce people.
And that's a standard process.
Into testifying against you. The book ends at 2023. You left
2024.
2024. And I'm going to invite you back.
Thank you very much.
You have to come back for part 2. Because we want to talk about that process, but also to talk about the work that you're doing now. And I give you a minute to talk about the work you're doing now as a result of being in that system for so long, in reintegration and looking at deportees and so on. We take a minute to do that.
Okay. Well, what happened now that I'm deported and I'm in Jamaica, I've made a promise to the Virgins in the system that once I return to Jamaica, I will try to set up some type of organizational structure to assist with their eventual return to Jamaica. So I incorporated Forged by Time Limited as a corporation, and I deliberately choose a for-profit corporation to try to build an income-based employment structure, not just a non-profit system. And that is what I'm presently engaged in. I'm also organizing a deportee conference. Sometimes I use the term involuntary return rate, but I rather use the term deportee. I know a lot of people kind of shy away from that term, but on a personal level, I do not. And we are planning a conference for August the 17th at the Simon Boulevard building located at 10-12 North Parade in Kingston, and we are looking forward to really galvanizing information and support for the returning resident. Because one of the things I find, a lot of the brethren and sisters who get deported, they are in the shadows. I know of one individual who is married to a woman, and he cannot even tell the woman that he's a deported, even while he's taking care of the family. So trying to set up a structure, and I was also reached out to by brethren in the prison system in Jamaica, seeking assistance. So I've liaison with someone that works at the Legal Aid Society. I'm trying to do volunteer service there to assist the brethren in the prison down here while trying to set up a structure to accommodate those that will be eventually. And I met with a lady by the name of Golata. I don't remember her first name. She said to say hello to you all.
Carla Gulata.
So I'm doing it on here that I did relay the message to you. She said hello. So so I look forward to the next opportunity to come back and expound that aspect of it.
We'll do part 2 in very short order.
All right.
I know next week is Father's Day, so it will be the week after that.
Okay.
We'll definitely do part 2. We invite you back, and then we'll give you some more time to go through the process and to talk about the work that's coming off the back of all of this.
Okay.
45 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, and humble and still holding calm. And
and thanks for this opportunity. Let me say shout out again to the virgins, them badass. And I have a team that assists me, including Mr. Andel here.
Yes, Mr. Andel.
I have virgins in Abdul in France. I have 2 other Virgin Rasta and Robert Barnes in Miami. So we meet on we call it like a Zoom program. And we try to brainstorm. And big up to the Virgin who gave me a lot of support, the most support since I returned to Jamaica. Jaboni Badass, thank you very much.
All right, give thanks, Jaboni. All right, so...
And thanks to you too and your staff and to everyone that's affiliated with this program.
Thank you for the work. We'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll definitely do a part 2 on this, and this is going to be next week, but the week after. Thank you so much, my brother Russ Michael Gillipriest Heron. What you have to read the book. What a book. What an experience. Please read the book. Guest online is already online. We are late, he's early, and we're going to be getting an update on the court proceedings and the legal challenge to access to Little Duns River. Legal consultant at the Rastafari Mansions and Organizations, former head of the Law Department of the University of Commonwealth Caribbean, attorney at law, over 20 years of experience. Dr. Michael Goff, former Deputy Director at the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, is on the line. Marcus Goff, how are you doing, my brother?
Morning, Mr. Kaboon. Morning, listeners. Nice to be here with you.
Greetings, my hardworking attorney at law brother. Boy, this is really something. I see you on Haiti. I see you on the beach access. I see you on Rastafari business. I see you on just generally justice and human rights across the Caribbean. Thank you so much for the work you do. Now we want to talk a little bit about the beach access, because quite a few cases in court, but one in particular, which Jabem has taken to court, and you are the attorney representing Jabem, has to do with access to the Little Duns River. What's the situation with Little Duns River right now, first of all?
Well, it was closed in August 2022, by the state on the premise that there was some crime nearby that occurred, and then, through Jabem advocacy and, of course, IRFM, support as well, and other church paternal and paternal and so forth, we were able to, get it reopened eventually one day a week, and at present it's twice a week, Saturdays and Sundays. It's open to the public, but the rest of the time it's closed. So we still, of course, have the case in court to be able to secure the public's access rights to be unrestricted and to be secured for the future. Mm-hmm. So when we went to court on Wednesday last week, the UDC's lawyers said that, well, they actually said it to letter prior, but said it officially that they were essentially willing to endorse on the relevant title for the land, the public's right of access to the space, as a part of the title would run with the title. So whoever would be the future owner of that land, would have to abide by and respect and observe the prescriptive rights of the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So help us to understand what that means in a layman language.
Right. So really, that has been, the large part of the fight has been to secure that right on the title of these lands that are across our coastlines. Right. Reason being that it was not on the title for these lands. Then the owners themselves then essentially, may feel that they're not legally bound to observe this public right of access, even though it may have, and oftentimes something that's been their customary for generations. Mm-hmm. So they can buy their land yesterday and claim that they don't recognize or know of any public access and use their land by the coast to block the public pathway. Mm-hmm. So having it on the title over the land means that they can no longer do that, because that's then a part, it's like a restriction, as it were, on their legal rights, recognized in law on their certificate of title for the land. Mm-hmm. So that was our plan all the time, to have it whereby generations to come, no matter what happened with the ownership of that land, whoever is the owner is bound by that legal restriction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the UDC is saying what at this point?
So the UDC is saying that they're willing to have that on the title, which is certainly something that we have asked for. What they're saying, however, is that we need to discuss the persons who are there, who have been the ones, as a local community, maintaining the space for decades, who have small businesses there and so forth, offering tours and other services to the public. They're saying that, they can't guarantee their tenure there, right? Mm. And we're saying that, well, it's difficult for us to really have the prescriptive rights recognized, but then not secure those who are on the front line of maintaining the space, for decades in the public interest. Right?
I find that really curious, Dr. Marcus Scarf. What is this normal, natural way of thinking legally? It would seem to me as something is going quite off on the part of UDC to even thinking that way.
Right. Well, the law does separate the public rights from then the rights of those persons who are there on the land, whether residential and or having a business there, Mm-hmm. So in that respect, the law doesn't deal with the two situations the same, but what we're saying is that naturally we cannot disconnect the two issues. The two are interrelated. When in August 2022, UDC closed down the space unceremonious without any notice to anybody. All those persons, one of them, after grounded in the Rastafari community, which is the historical community there, many of them having paid trade licenses and business licenses, paying JPS and other services down there, but no notice. And they have suffered losses in the process, right? By virtue of the closure. So we can't disconnect the public access generally, of course, and of course, when the public comes there, the same one providing bathroom services, maintaining the bathroom, providing water, and other kind of support for the public to enjoy what is our natural heritage, right? So we can't disconnect the surrounding community. And I think that's part of the whole colonial heritage. So we view land in Jamaica, government oftentimes, is that we own the land, we manage the land, we must decide how the land is used. And what we're demanding as Jabin is a more community-centered, inclusive co-management approach to managing beach access across the island. Make the fishermen them who have their associations co-manage these spaces in some instances. They have been there for a long time and deserve land titles. Let the local organizations who are there day and night being a co-management arrangement, they're excluded from decision-making and competing on opportunities on these beaches.
And so this is the element of it that the UDC is now currently resisting?
Well, they're saying that they can't commit. And we're saying, well, all right, well, let's commit to something. Let's at least commit that they will not be moved and that there will be a process going forward for these things to be resolved with these objectives in mind. At least, because, they're saying, the election coming up, of course, and so politically, these things being done are still, in train and they change, all these kind of things. But of course, I think the beach access management policy itself states that the objective going forward must be inclusive co-management with local society, local government, CBOs and civil society. So we're saying let's have that commitment, a part of then the court order going forward, so that we can be assured, and those persons there can be assured that they will be included and will not be, evicted because of their advocacy on behalf of the public.
And the UDC has precedence in this manner because Sailor's Hole, Fisherman's Point in Otrias, a very similar thing happened. I mean, we were at the heart and center of that. And the fishermen who we stood with until the very end insisted that they cannot accept what was being given or what was being decided upon unless you were going to at least write into the documents what would be the fate of the fishermen who were on that property. And even though it wasn't necessarily the best way, but at the end of the day, there were quite a handful of fishermen who were there consistently, who they kept on and provided shops and so on for them. So that very same precedent, I think, can be used for Little Duns River in terms of ensuring that the people who have been there are taken care of in all of the legal wranglings.
Yes, it must be a model that we insist on across the island, because all of these places have their associations, their local groups, the fisherman groups. Many of them, again, for the fishermen, they are paying registration for their boats and for their permits to fish, and then they're being excluded from their beaches and their spaces. They've used with their grandparents and so forth from generations. They've been excluded without notice, without even a meeting or any kind of consultation. So we're saying we have to have a model that doesn't exclude people, the same people on the front line of our environmental and coastal protection and management.
So what's the next step from there then, considering that there seem to be, is it a deadlock?
No. The lawyers have been very open to discussions. We started to have discussions in court on Friday, on Wednesday, Independence Day, and we have agreed to continue. Saying we go back to court on July 17th. So we're looking to continue discussions as soon as possible this week. To see. So I think we can work it out. I think that I see, that there's reason within it, and I think that, having the policy recognize these principles, then I don't see why we should not be able to come out with some language that can secure their tenure going forward. It certainly wouldn't look good on UDC, to agree to the public interest, but then to in the very next step thereafter, seeking to evict those who have been there for 20, 30, 40 or more years, you know. So certainly we think they must do better.
Yes, on the one hand, good movement on the part, in terms of the negotiation so far, in terms of the fact that the UDC is now willing to do what it is that Jabem has been asking them to do, and the people of Little Duns River and the people of Oterias, which is to free up the space in layman's term. But the other part of it is now to make allowance for those people who have been on the beach for a very long time.
Yes, many of them are going to have their coxswain license, their tour operator license, even especially themselves. You know, and sometimes when I hear people say, they're business persons, they're commercializing, yes, we all have a right to make a livelihood, right? So to say that we can't and shouldn't seek to earn. Yes. If it is open, people come and buy and sell. Nothing's wrong with that per se, right? It does not exclude them simply because we think, they're business persons. They're simply part of the public. They live and work on the same property, or nearby, and they deserve their part of the future of that place.
All right. Well, we'll lean on you as usual and depend on you. So when there's any update on that, we'll hear from you again. And Jabem, I'm quite sure. I'm optimistic. You sound very optimistic, so I'm just optimistic like you.
Yes, Mr. Kabu, I want to give thanks for IFM on going advocacy over the years. Yes. You know what I mean? Yes, and the ministers for Oterias and all others across the island, because I think we have to recognize this is an important movement. I think we see that the government seems to be acknowledging that. They want to, make sure people are aware that we see they have committed going forward to have all hotel developments, have space for public access to beaches. So we want to hold them accountable to these things and more. We want the overall issue of land reform to be on the agenda of whichever political party forms the next administration.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, my brother. Dr. Marcus Goff, thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tommy.
All right. So, Little Duns River, we're not letting it go until we are sure that the people who cut a path to the river, who cut a path to the falls, who've been there from day one, who clean it up, who literally like a Columbus situation, discovered it and cut a path so that so many of us can have access to that space, that they're not driven off in the entire process. We saw what they did at Fisherman's Point, and the fishermen there, the fisher folk there, had to literally organize themselves into a benevolent society and stood their ground before the UDC and the government and so on decided that, okay, yes, we will keep those fishermen, those fisher folk who were always on the beach. This is a very similar situation, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Bell Navis, if you have to step in, you need to step in, sir. We can't allow or have any situation where, yes, the fight that we've been fighting, which is access to Little Duns River, where we won that fight, but the loss is worse than the win. Because the people who discovered the spot, who've been there before some of us were born, the people who identify the space and have been holding place, that they are driven off. Not on our watch. No how, no way. Not at all. All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And hey, listen up. Top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4. Hot pick and cash pot early bird draws coming up in just about 5 minutes. Let me tell you quickly that at just around 9 o'clock or thereabouts, let me just double check that this is going to be at 9. Yes, just around 9 o'clock, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Darius Figuera, social researcher and author. And we're going to be looking at 3 articles, 3 different countries, regional organized crime analysis and possible link. Now, the 3 articles that I want you to be paying attention to that we're going to be discussing. First is Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has claimed that a group of paramilitary terrorists was intercepted while trying to enter the country from Trinidad and Tobago with a cache of weapons. He was speaking at the swearing-in ceremony for Carrillo, the new governor of Sucre State, which is a coastal region in northeastern Venezuela that faces Trinidad and Tobago across the Gulf of Paria. The state's strategic location has made it a key area in cross-border security concerns, especially amid tensions involving migration and smuggling routes. He said war-grade weapons were seized during the operation. And to quote him, he said, yesterday, a group of terrorists were captured attempting to enter the eastern part of the country from Trinidad and Tobago with a shipment of weapons of war, including Colombians. Maduro blamed what he called the fascist far right for ongoing destabilization attempts and urged Venezuelans to remain alert. He said, be vigilant because they have not been able to, nor will they be able to establish violence in the country. And then in Jamaica, a high-level probe involving, this is from the Jamaica Observer, May 29, a high-level probe involving Jamaican and United States law enforcement agencies is now underway into one of, if not the largest, gun find at one of the nation's ports. Jamaica Observer sources say more than 200 guns, including high-powered weapons and thousands of rounds of ammunition, were seized by the police at a port in the corporate area on Wednesday. This could be a record. It is a massive find, one of the sources said. It has to be a major players in the illegal gun trade involved, added another source. And that is a story that is well covered here on the island. So since late 2024, local law enforcement agencies have thwarted several attempts to smuggle guns into the country. Late last December, almost 40 guns, firearm accessories, and 3,000 rounds of ammunition were found in barrels labeled groceries at a wharf in Kingston. In February, 50 handguns, 16 rifles, more than 4,000 rounds of ammunition. These were seized by investigators from the FNID and the Jamaica Customs Agency. They intercepted a shipment from the United States. And there are many more. And the third story, U.S. imposed sanctions on Guyanese nationals, including a senior police officer. The Guyanese government says it will continue to work diligently with the United States after the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctioned several named Guyanese and foreign nationals as a result of continuing investigations into the use of Guyana as a place for transshipment of drugs to the North American country. In a statement, Georgetown said it welcomes a significant development. And so later on, at around 9 o'clock, we'll be looking at this with senior researcher and author Dr. Darius Figueroa. 3 articles, 3 different countries, regional organized crime analysis, and possible links. We have been talking to Dr. Darius Figueroa about international organized crime, as you know. So stand by for that. Before that, we'll be talking about this mining for gold or black gold in Jamaica. Dr. Vincent Adams, energy expert and specialist, will be joining me on the phone lines right after the Supreme Ventures draw.